Hey, welcome back everyone. So let me start by saying that this series of videos has been the hardest thing for me to nail down. I initially started with a premise. I was going to review the Nikon Z8 that Nikon loaned me and use it for landscape and general nature work and report on my findings. Things took an interesting twist along the way, but we'll get to that after the location video. Before we watch that, however, I want to let you know how this series of videos is going to be split up. First, for part one, we're going to have the intro, location, and discussion video where I take you out on a photography trip, as I tend to do, and then we'll discuss my initial findings on the Z8. This is where I'll give you my general first impressions and talk about what I like and I don't like on first examination. Second, for part two, I'll dive deeper into the settings and use cases for this camera. I'll have shot more landscape, wildlife, and made more video footage with the camera. I'll have shot some other genres such as architecture or travel work, and in general, I'll have a better idea of what I think of the camera. There'll also very likely be a location video attached to that video. Third, and possibly the final Z8 introduction video, will be a little more hands-on. I'll talk more about the settings and what might work for me, and talk about how this camera fits into my workflow if I were to have it. I'll do a final rundown on likes and dislikes, and we'll wrap things up with a more detailed look at the video and photo capabilities of the camera. Finally, if I do any other videos, I'll touch on pixel shift shooting and performance for wildlife videos. This pretty much covers how I'd like to proceed ideally with looking at the Nikon Z8 and the 5 videos that I sort of want to create about it. Now, that said, let's go ahead and watch our location video, and then we'll come back and talk about the camera. Well, good morning. It is about 5:56 in the morning. I'm racing to try to get sunrise. We're headed to Owl's Head Lighthouse. I think you've seen Owl's Head before when I was shooting, I guess, the ZF. That was a nice little trip. So today we're shooting the Z8, which is pretty exciting. I only have it for 3 more days, so I'm trying to get everything done that I had initially intended. When we get there, I think I'm gonna go down to maybe I'll go up to the lighthouse. It's a hard decision. We'll see. Maybe I'll go up to the lighthouse. But there's a nice beach there too that I wanted to go check out. Anyway, I'll touch back when we get there. Good morning. I made it here, and I got set up sort of a shot. It's going to be a little stretched out kind of shot, but I found my first composition of the day. As you see, I'm here next to the lighthouse, and we're up on a bluff. We're over 100 feet above the ocean, which is pretty cool. And I've set the shot up, and it is going to stretch the house just a touch. I may correct that in Lightroom with the perspective correction tools. But so I've got it set up with the lighthouse, almost like what you're seeing here. Lighthouse is on the left side, the stairway. It's sort of like what you see, but reversed. What a beautiful morning. I just love getting out on mornings like this. So using this camera to do this, I'm starting to realize it's got some cool benefits. Like the lack of an actual shutter is interesting. I say cool benefits, well, it's got some of the things that are on the Z7 too, like I can get rid of the display and actually see just what I'm framing, which is always nice. But overall, it's really not a whole lot different from shooting with the Z7 or Z7 II. I did some comparisons, and I'll show you that footage or you've already seen that footage, or it's somewhere in this video where I was shooting them side by side just so I could do a 400% pixel peep just to see what the differences were. And it was basically, it's negligible. There might be a quite edge to the Z7's image quality, but we already knew that. That's not news. But the slight edge is so slight. So for me, I don't mind a bigger, heavier camera all that much, but I do like the compact nature of the Z7. So I'm hoping for a Z7 III this year, because I think that's probably the route I'll go. This camera's big and has a lot of features I'll likely never use. That's a nice camera, don't get me wrong. I used to own a D8 or a D850, which is this thing's sort of the replacement to the D850. Finally, 5 years later. So anyway, I jumped right into it. Welcome out. It's a beautiful morning, and yeah, I raced to get here. I knew I was going to be a little late, but I don't think I missed too much because the light is still popping off pretty good out here. I'm pretty impressed. And oh, shout out to Chris for the hat. Thank you. Much appreciated, my friend. All right, little history lesson. So, Owl's Head Light sits on the mouth of Rockland Harbor. It marks the southern point of the harbor, and the northern / other side entrance to the harbor is on the Rockland Breakwater, and it's called the Rockland Breakwater Light. It's another beautiful, beautiful light, and yeah, I feel so fortunate to live here and be able to experience these places. All right, I've reconfigured for another similar shot to what I just took. More of the stairway in it going off to the bottom right. Here, why don't we talk about it? So, you see here I have the lighthouse anchoring the image. Stairs are going off down to the right. I have that tree at the bottom right of the image, sort of anchoring that exit point so your eye bounces back into the image with it brighter. You can see now, you see that's the railing and the stairs. They're sort of tying the whole image together with this curved hump at the bottom with the lighthouse coming off of it. And then the horizon line helps the image to remain, even though there's a little bit of stretch to it, it helps the image to remain slightly organized and even, if that makes any sense. Well, it was supposed to get windy, so I'm expecting that. It is getting very windy. So you can see we're up on this bluff way above the ocean. Well, we're getting a really nice glow on the horizon, so. Two-second timer, f11, 1/13 of a second. I'm shooting at about 15 millimeters. I'm shooting with the 14-30 Nikkor lens. Love this lens, super compact. Love it. Yeah. So it's funny, I had a discussion with my friend recently. He goes, "Oh, I don't like gear. I don't think about gear." And I was sort of taken aback because he was saying it in a way that implied that he thought I should be ashamed of liking gear. And I always have to remind people that one of the biggest gearheads that ever existed in the photography world was Ansel Adams. And did it make him any less of a photographer? I always say that if you let the gear get in the way of the work, then there's a problem. But there is nothing wrong with loving gear. It's the only reason I can justify doing reviews and things for the channel, is because I just love playing with new things. And God, these are just tools to me, right? I mean, I really, really love using this technology we have. And I love going back and using film. I mean, I still shoot lots of film. I'm all over the place. It helps I'm technically diagnosed ADHD. I'm very much like Tigger. I'm all over the place. It's getting super duper windy, and I'm drinking coffee. I do love good coffee. So I put in a request to Nikon. This is their camera that I'm consigned. I'm renting it for the, like I said, for the cost of the shipping. It's basically renting it. But I talked to them. I wanted to get the new firmware update, what is the 2.0 firmware update, and it's supposed to be absolutely astounding firmware update, and I'm waiting to hear back from them, but I have a feeling they're not going to let me update the camera to the new firmware, so I won't get to experience the 2.0 firmware. It makes me muy sad, but we'll see. Maybe they'll. God, it is windy. Maybe they'll let me do it. The wind is really picking up. You guys flopping I can't take the strap off the camera either because it's not my camera. So I would normally not have a strap on the camera. All right. We're gonna wait a couple more minutes and then we're gonna go see if there's anything else to photograph. So I photographed this tree before, you see behind me. I never really pulled a shot from it I liked all that much, but I have photographed it before. So I figured I'd stop and have a look and see if the light was going to be hitting it right. And it looks like the light is going to be hitting it correctly. So we are going to try to make a photo of it. The sun's coming just up over the hill now, so it's going to start dappling the light on the tree. All right, unfortunately, there's a lot of bright in the background. Oh, so I've got to sort of angle down to get the shot, because I'm not getting the whole tree, I'm just getting the bottom, because that's what's so interesting, like all this moss, a lot of leading lines to draw your eye around in the composition. All right. I want to thank you again for coming out. What a fantastic morning. We had such good conditions. And hopefully we've got a couple of nice shots. And yeah, if you found it useful, give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoyed my channel, please subscribe. Subscriptions are what keep the channel going. So thank you so much. Thanks for coming out with me. I love having you on this journey with me, and I will see you again next time. Thanks again. Bye-bye. Man, that was a beautiful morning. And that lighthouse shot, God, I love that. Okay, so let's talk about the Z8 and what I think of it. I initially went into this wanting the end result to be that I think the Z7 series are the best landscape cameras, that the Z8 is too big, too heavy, too bloated, all the twos to be practical as a landscape camera. What I found contradicted that from the very start. I struggled with the idea that I would lose almost half a stop of dynamic range over the Z7, or that my perception of a lack of a shutter was going to be an issue. After extensive shooting of this camera, though, I can flatly say that none of these issues are issues at all. The dynamic range is spectacular, just as it was with the Z7, and the colors are still purely Nikon. The handling is sublime, and the overall package thus far seems ideal. Now, there's some things wrong with this camera, I'm sure. I'm going to have to find something wrong with it. But I haven't had a huge amount of time yet to find them, to be fair. I'm sitting here thinking about my friend Paul, who's like, dude, when you review stuff, you don't say enough negative stuff about it. Well, if for me something is a positive experience and I'm not having a negative experience with it, I have a really hard time with saying negative things just for the sake of saying negative things. There are most definitely some negative things about this camera, and we'll talk about that. Anyway, I haven't had a huge amount of time with this camera, and time is what I'll need to see how it works for me and to locate those things that I don't enjoy about the platform overall. Okay, that said, let's run down the list. I do love a list. My list is taking forever to go by. I'm trying to come on, teleprompter, come on. I hope I'm not too fake on my teleprompter, because overall I really love to read from a teleprompter. It is the best thing I can do when I am trying to explain to you what I like or dislike about a camera. Okay, there we go. My list is finally up. Understand, this is not an exhaustive list, and your opinions might be different from mine. But in the end, yours and mine are but merely opinions. Okay, let's get on with this. Pros. Excellent image quality. So as I said, I was a little bit worried about the image quality side of it. You look at the DxO results, and it says there's a half a stop, almost a half a stop of or about a half a stop of difference for dynamic range, whatever. I'm not experiencing anything that would say that. However, a half a stop isn't much. So overall, I'm getting pretty much the exact same image quality I was getting out of my Z7, or you might get out of a Z7 II out of this camera. And it's excellent. Shadows are very recoverable. Highlights are very recoverable. Shadows more than highlights. I've seen some people complain about the higher megapixel sensors and the shadow highlights. The thing is, the noise you're seeing when you pixel peep down to nothing, it just looks bigger because you're so small. If you were to scale that down to, say, 30 megapixels, like the D800, which had a similar dynamic range, but less shadow noise, it's a 30 megapixel camera, so the shadow noise is less apparent. Whereas with a 45 megapixel camera, your shadow noise is going to be more obvious. But if you took that 45 megapixel image and scaled it down to the 30 megapixels, you would find your shadow noise is either the same or even slightly better. Pixel peeping is not your friend. It's nice to see how sharp something is or to see what the real base results are, but it's not going to help you decide how good of image quality your camera is producing. I mean, unless you're dealing... I'm not trying to insult Micro Four Thirds here, but if you don't expose a Micro Four Thirds image perfectly and you have to boost the shadows, you have a problem. The noise gets out of control, and you don't want to print any bigger than 8 by 10 because your noise gets way out of control in the shadows. That said, you can use AI noise removal, and Bob's your uncle, no problem. Everything is fine. So these days, noise in the shadows is not an issue. If you do have some, use AI in Photoshop or in Lightroom to remove it. All right. I'm running on. I got a lot of stuff to cover here, so I really can't run on like that. All right, the autofocus is insanely good. It is superior to anything I've ever used. I'm told that the Sonys are slightly better. Fine. The autofocus is ridiculous on this camera. I was out shooting some wildlife, and it was just... I would lock onto a bird in flight, and it would just follow the bird right through the sky. It was astounding. Now, understand, the best autofocus I've played with, sure, is the Z9, but the best autofocus I owned before this was in my, I guess, ZF. And they're similar autofocuses. But before that was like the D850, which at the time was considered a great autofocus. But by today's standards, it's not. So anyway, let's move on from that. Awesome autofocus. I love the multi-way articulating screen. It's almost exactly like the Fuji style, where it pops out and pops sideways as well. So you can do, or backwards, sideways, backwards in all directions. This is fantastic because you can use this when you're shooting low to the ground in portrait orientation. It allows you to have a screen that is, pointing like this, so you can actually compose when it's close to the ground without having to lie down on the ground. So I love the articulating screen. The viewfinder, bigger and brighter than ever. Really, really good viewfinder. Very pleased with it. Trying to think. It's very bright too. When you crank the brightness way up in the viewfinder, it's like perfect. I don't like auto brightness on a viewfinder, so I suggest, this will be part of my settings video, I'm sure, I suggest you turn the auto brightness off, because sometimes it can get confused and then suddenly your screen inside is just totally dark and you're like, what's going on here? Excuse me. All right. All of the external buttons for settings changes. I mean, I don't have to take my gloves off as long as the camera's set up right. I can set shutter. I can set ISO. I can set bracketing. I can set drive mode. I can, and then use the I menu if I need to double up on anything and be able to shoot one-handed. And I'll talk about that later because I did double up some because I wanted to be able to change settings one-handed sometimes. It does happen. All right. I really like Starlight View, and this is something the ZF has as well. It makes it very easy to compose when you're out there before dawn and trying to figure out what your composition is going to be. When it's your eyes can't see what you're trying to compose, especially through a viewfinder. The older mirrorless cameras couldn't see what they were trying to compose, and with Starlight View, you have this amazing like lit up view of what you're trying to shoot, and it is fantastic. It is really that good. Really, really excellent tool. I really like the top display on it. Granted, the old Z7 and Z7 II had a top display, but it was nothing compared to this new top display. The screen on the top of the camera, it's light years better. It gives you all the information you need. It's easy to read. Lights up bright. I like the display a lot more than the old one. And of course, you can turn it all off. I like the light up buttons on this camera. For shooting at night for astro, having the light up button so you can see where a button is, if you maybe are not 100% with, memorize the feel of your camera, you can have the light up buttons, and that'll help you find the buttons you need to change settings with. And I like the amount of settings for which iMenu can be set up with. And that's the same as the ZF, by the way. When I wrote this note, I wasn't really thinking about the ZF, but I have to include that in there because I think it's pretty much most of the same settings as the ZF that can go on the iMenu. But I love that there's this huge array of settings you can put on the iMenu now. Alrighty. And let's see, what else do I have on my list? Okay, that's all I have on my positive list now. There's going to be more as I go deeper into the videos. All right, cons. There are definitely cons to this camera. You thought I was just going to love on this camera and not have anything bad to say because of what I said about my buddy. He's always calling me out for something. Anyway, weight. Weight is probably the biggest con. It weighs, excuse me, it weighs 8 ounces more than the Z7, Z7 II, which both of those weigh pretty much the same thing. It's 2 pounds versus 1.5 pounds. I'm trying to think the gram weights. I think the gram weights are 9 something versus 7 something. So it's, it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you think about it, a half pound is 33% more weight. That's a third of the Nikon Z7 more in weight. However, it's not a really straightforward thing because it's not really something that bothers me. However, it may bother some people, and it's not an insignificant amount of weight. So, some would argue... Oh, actually, let me hit on size first. It's a little bigger than the Z7. Some would say it's a lot bigger. I have a hard time with that term because the Z7's compact, but the Z8 is also pretty compact. It's 30% smaller than the D850 was. And it is bigger than the Z7. It's true. But a huge amount? Maybe. Anyway, that is definitely a con, though, because I like the compact nature of the Z7. Too many features that a landscape shooter may never want. Now, I also wrote this before I was really out shooting with it, and I don't want to give away any of my future data here, but if you shoot any kind of nature or any kind of anything but just straight tripod-mounted landscape, all of the settings on this camera will be settings you use. They are... this thing is the spiritual successor to the D850. It is the modern D850. And I'll talk more about that here in a bit. So, when I wrote this con, I was still pulling for the Z7. I like all the features. I can't lie. So, it's a con, but it's not really a con. The U1, U2, and U3 settings, that's user 1, 2, and 3 settings, they're missing. But there's a different system now. And this is like... I can't decide. I really like the U settings because when you went into them, they went back to a predetermined set of settings. So if I screwed up all my settings while I was in there, I could turn the camera off, turn the camera back on, and bang, I'm back to the settings I definitely used to begin with in landscape. So I'd go out in the morning and hit U2, which was my landscape settings, and it would always be at 1 second exposure, f11, ISO 64, single drive mode, etc. I'd have it all set up that way. If I messed around with any of those settings, I could just turn the camera off, back on, and they were gone. So the way I'm so far getting the Z8 is it doesn't have something exactly like that. What it has is user banks. So if you go into one bank and you get all your settings where you want them, they are now in that bank. You can switch to another bank or even another bank. And I don't know how many banks there are, I forgot. But each one is basically like having a whole new camera in your hands. And you can mess with all the settings and it'll keep them without you having to save them. But this could be bad if you're like me and you just want to turn it on and run and have it be exactly where you had it. So this is a weird con, and it's probably just something to get used to. I just kind of got into the dumb settings back in the day, and it made it a little easier for me to, be an idiot. Pay a little more attention, it won't be a problem. Now, there may be some hardcore settings like that just reset every time you reboot the camera, turn the camera back off and on. But I haven't figured that out yet, and when I have a chance, to look at another Z8, I will do that. All right, what are my notes about this? I said reset every time you turn the camera. It's dynamic settings. Is they're able to, right? Okay. So and then size, of course. What I also wanted to say about size is this camera's great on a tripod. It's great handheld if you're shooting studio, if you're shooting commercial work, tripod or handheld. If you're shooting architecture, if you're out shooting in the wilderness, if you're shooting any kind of landscape. The one place where a camera this big is maybe not the best, however, there's plenty of guys who shoot with big cameras that do street photography. This camera may not be the best move for a street photographer because it's not inconspicuous. It's a conspicuous camera. It is very obvious. All right. So that gets us to almost to the end of what we're going to talk about today. So in the end, what is this camera? Well, this camera is a fantastic landscape photography camera. But you say, Tom, isn't any good at other forms of photography? And I'll tell you, this camera is also a fantastic wildlife camera, and that it's a fantastic macro camera, and that it's a fantastic sports photography camera, and that it's an amazing studio camera for portraiture or for product photography, that it's a fantastic wedding camera if you don't mind carrying the extra weight, which most wedding photographers don't. It is fantastic for pretty much every single form of photography. It doesn't have an Achilles tendon that I can find. I mean, it shoots 15 frames a second, for God's sakes. 30, if you want to do the continuous C30, which is, I believe it's the 8K JPEG based. And then there's 60, and I believe there's 120 frame per second photography in this camera, which is just, I don't know who needs that, but okay. See, back in the D850 days, you would say, in the older Nikon days, this is 7 years ago, you would say, oh, wow, this is an amazing camera for so many things, but if you want speed, you got to buy that D6, because then you'll get the 20 frames or 15, 20 frames a second, because the D850 didn't do anything like that. Nowadays, it's a different story. Yes, the Z9 is a faster camera overall, but it's not much faster. The Z9 is made for people who need the Z9. The Z8 is made for everybody else, and it's a camera that'll do everything extremely well. Even street photography, if you don't mind people seeing you with a giant camera in your hand. So is it an amazing filmmaking camera? Yes. That's part of the amazing sensor they put in it. It's a stacked BSI 45 megapixel sensor that has such a fast readout. You don't get jello in film when you move quickly. Like on the camera I'm shooting on right now. Watch my hand. I'm actually keeping my hand perfectly straight, but it looks like my hand's bending. Right, that doesn't happen on the Z8 very easily. Things have to be going extremely fast for that to happen because it reads out so fast. Okay, so I wanted to go back and actually hit one more con. Price. This camera is blindingly expensive. It's $4,000. If you can get a 0% financing deal for 24 months, then you're fine, I suppose, if you can afford that. Anyway, let's go back. I'm getting sidetracked here. I just wanted to wrap this up, so I'm going to wrap it up like this. Is this one of the best cameras on the market? Yes. It does everything well. So in the end, it is truly a spiritual predecessor to the D850, but 10 times better. And that was regarded as the best DSLR of all time. And truthfully, it was. And still is. Nobody makes DSLRs anymore except for, you know who you are, Pentax. Pentax is what I was going to do. But they're not making anything like the D850. Okay, so in the end, I really did love this camera. Once I sent it back, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I'm still thinking about it today. Even when I'm not working on this review. It left such a positive impression on me. Well, I bought one. And I bought the three-legged thing bracket to go on it, which is a great bracket. I couldn't help it. I thought I would wait for the Z7 III, and what I realized was you're always going to be waiting for the next best thing, and the Z7 III is never in life going to be a competitor to this camera in all the things this camera does so well. The Z7 III is probably going to be a 60.5 megapixel camera, and now I also understand it's probably going to have higher dynamic range even than any of these cameras. But I'm not going to be out shooting wildlife at 30 frames a second, or using it for all my commercial work, or, you know, all the things I rely on a camera for. This will make my life easier to use. The Z7, is it still the greatest landscape camera of all time? At this point, I would say yes. If it's just static landscape you're doing, you're not doing anything else. And not even that. Remember, like I said, the Z7 is still pretty good at everything. This is truly a next level camera. And all of those things I plan on making videos about, I can do that now that I bought one. And by the way, 0% 24-month financing. Nikon, thank you for that. And by the way, Nikon had nothing to do with this. I got the camera they sent me through the NPS, Nikon Professional Services loaner program, and I had to pay the shipping. And the shipping both ways cost me $160, $62, I think, $162. I could have probably rented one for 3 days for that, but I had it for 7, so... The trick with the rental companies, by the way, is rent on a Friday on a 3-day weekend, and you don't have to have it back, or Thursday on a 3-day weekend, I'm sorry, and they'll let you have it for an extra day because you rent it on a Thursday. And since it doesn't have to be back till after the weekend, you get the Monday, and it gives you 5 days for the price of 2, I believe. That's the trick with the rental companies. Look into it. Unless they caught on to it, that used to be the trick for the rental companies. Anyway, so I have found the successor to my Z7, and I'm not getting rid of my Z7. I'm still going to use it. It's actually going to Nikon now, though, because it's a lot of things are failing on that camera because I've treated it pretty rough. It needs new PASM dial. It's all failing. So buttons aren't working right. But once I get it back, it'll be as new, and it'll be my second camera. And so, real fast, now that we're done with that, I love the Z8, by the way, or I wouldn't have put myself in debt up to my eyeballs for it. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and its sweet, sweet goodness. So smooth and powerful, so strong and silent. Okay, so don't forget, put the video over that, make it into like porn stuff. That'll be funny. All right, one last thing to talk about, eclipse. I'm in the state it's going to last be in, but I'm not going to Houghton. Everybody's going to be in Houghton, and who cares if you're in the last town that it's in the United States. I'm considering staying here because I'm only 40 miles outside of the totality, which means I'm still basically right on the edge of totality. It's a very, very, very slim difference. And I bought my filter. I got the Nisi. Here, see if we can get this to come up. There it goes. Of course, I don't have enough light. Which light is going to work? Here, I'm going to have to put this at an angle for you. Got the Nisi solar filter, 16.5 stop ND 100,000 filter. I'm going to use this for my shots of the eclipse itself, and I'm going to use NDs for my landscape shots. I'll just stack a 10 and a 16 and use the magnetic so I can take it on and off quickly and get the shot, and then shoot it with the ND so I can get the sun correctly. Oh, and don't forget, guys, if you're going to look at the eclipse, get these. 4-pack at B&H, like $6. And these are the ones that are fully ISO certified. And they're branded for B&H, of all things. I'll be making a video about it, and I will either stay here or I'll go to Vermont. My father-in-law lives right under totality. And if I don't go to Vermont and I don't stay here, I'll go someplace inland and get under 100% totality. But I feel like staying here and shooting is probably the way to go, because I can go out to my friend's island and really get a shot nobody else is going to get with the sun in it. Then again, we'll see what the weather does. It could just mess all of us over here in Maine, because up here, if you're not sure about the weather, just wait a minute. And if you don't like what the weatherman told you, it's probably not going to happen that way anyway. So we have some interesting weather on the coast here. So thanks for listening to me drone on. I think we're at like almost an hour on this video. Now we're going to be 45 minutes. Yikes, I got to figure out how to trim it. But thank you for listening. I will be covering more on this camera in probably a few weeks. I think next week I'm going to do the 100 to 400 again, and we're going to talk about why it is the one lens to rule them all. And I'll be shooting it on this, which is... Don't worry, it's not replacing my ZF. I love my ZF too. My 3 cameras are now, my 3 Nikons. I love my cameras. And like I said in my video about gear, there's nothing wrong with loving gear. There's nothing wrong with owning some gear. What's wrong is if you do that and you aren't actually making photographs with it. Then again, who am I to judge? If it's your hobby to collect camera stuff and never use it, that's fine too. But thank you guys. I really appreciate you being here. And I will see you again next week. And same time, same bat channel. And yeah. I appreciate you guys so much. Oh, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe. I mean, only if you found all of this useful. If you think this is complete trash, then, whatever. Go watch somebody else. Hit dislike twice. That's how I'll actually find out if you really did hit the dislike, because you got to hit it twice. That's the secret. That's the secret thing in YouTube. You hit the dislike twice, and it'll let me know it's been hit. All right, guys. Thanks for coming out again. See you next week. Oh, have a great weekend, and bye-bye.